I didn't plan to move in with my ex's older brother. That's the part one keep having to explain, like there was some grand, messy intention behind it. There wasn't. It just happened. And the worst part? He knew exactly who I was the second I walked through the door. I realized it from the way he looked at me. Not surprised. Not confused. Just this quiet, unreadable pause like he'd already flipped through a mental file with my name on it and decided not to say anything. Yet, his name was Ethan, 34, calm in a way that felt earned, not lazy. The kind of guy who didn't rush, didn't fill silence just to be heard. He had that older brother confidence that made you feel 12 years old and way too self-aware at the same time. And yeah, he was my ex's brother. My ex, Ryan, and I had burned out almost 2 years earlier. Not explosively, no screaming matches or dramatic breakups. Just disappointment piling up until neither of us could pretend anymore. We'd stopped talking completely. Blocked. Clean break. Or so I thought. Then my lease ended. Rent went insane. My roommate moved in with his girlfriend. And suddenly I was scrolling listings at 2 in the morning, panicking, when Ethan's post came up. Spare room. Quiet place. Short-term okay. The last name caught my eye immediately. I stared at my phone for a solid minute, thumb hovering, already knowing I shouldn't. I knew exactly who he was. I'd met him twice, both times briefly, both times uncomfortably memorable. Once at a family barbecue where he'd barely spoken to me, just nodded, handed me a beer. Another time at Ryan's birthday dinner, where Ethan showed up late, took one look at us holding hands, and looked away like he didn't want to see how close we were. He'd always felt distant, observant. I told myself it had been years. That Ryan probably didn't even talk to him about me anymore. That Ethan might not remember me at all. That was the lie I needed. So I messaged him. The reply came faster than I expected. Yeah, room's still open. Come by tomorrow if you want to see it. No emoji. No small talk. Just that. When I showed up the next evening, rain still clinging to my jacket, I almost turned around when he opened the door. He looked older than I remembered, in the best way. Broader shoulders. A few lines at the corners of his eyes. Same steady gaze. Hey, he said. Hey. I replied, suddenly very aware of my heartbeat. There was that pause. Just a fraction of a second. Then he stepped aside. Come in. The apartment was clean, understated. Dark wood. Neutral colors. Everything intentional. It smelled like coffee and something citrusy. He showed me the room, explained the rent, the rules, quiet nights, no parties, shared kitchen, basic stuff. The whole time, he didn't mention Ryan. Didn't ask how I knew him. Didn't ask anything personal at all. That silence was worse than confrontation. So, I finally said, standing awkwardly near the doorway, I should probably say, I know this might be weird. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me carefully. I know who you are, he said calmly. There it was. My stomach dropped. You were Ryan's boyfriend, he continued. I recognized you the second you walked in. I swallowed. Right? Yeah, I figured you might. Another pause. Longer this time. That was a long time ago, he said. And this is just a room. His voice was even, but something about his eyes shifted. Like he was measuring distance past versus present. I nodded. If it's uncomfortable, I get it. I can keep looking. He studied me for a moment, then shook his head slightly. No, he said. You can move in. Just like that. No warning. No discussion. I should have walked away. I should have trusted the tight feeling in my chest, the sense that unresolved things don't magically disappear just because time passes. But I didn't. 2 weeks later, I carried my boxes into his apartment, past the man who knew exactly who I was and apparently had his own reasons for letting me stay. I just didn't know yet how much history still lived between us, or how quiet tension can be louder than words. And I definitely didn't know how dangerous it would feel to share a space with someone who was never supposed to look at me the way he was starting to. Living with Ethan was quiet. Not awkward exactly. Just restrained. Like we were both aware there was something fragile between us, something we didn't want to bump into by accident. Our schedules barely overlapped at first. He left early for work, some kind of project management job, I gathered, and came back around 6. I worked mostly from home, so I learned the rhythms of the apartment before I really learned him. The hum of the dishwasher at night, the way he lined his shoes by the door, the fact that he always made coffee for 2, even though I never asked. The first morning I noticed it, I almost said something. There was a second mug sitting next to the coffee maker, already warm, steam curling up lazily. I hovered in the kitchen doorway, unsure if it was intentional or just habit. "Help yourself," he said from behind me. I startled. He'd come in quietly, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. Two put together for someone who'd clearly been awake longer than me. "Thanks," I said, reaching for the mug. Our fingers didn't touch, but it felt close enough that my skin buzzed anyway. We drank in silence. Not uncomfortable, just charged. Like there were sentences we were both editing out before they reached our mouths. I kept waiting for him to mention Ryan, to ask how we'd ended, to ask why I'd really moved in. But he never did. And the longer he didn't, the more present it became. At night, I'd hear him moving around in the living room while I was in bed. Sometimes he'd pause outside my door just for a second. I told myself I was imagining it, that apartments make noise, that people hesitate. But I knew the difference between coincidence and awareness. The first crack in the wall came on a Thursday. I was cooking pasta, distracted, scrolling on my phone, when I heard his voice behind me. "You still like it spicy?" I froze. "Sorry," I said, turning. He was leaning against the counter, watching me with an expression I hadn't seen before, almost cautious. "Ryan," he clarified. "He always complained you put too much chili in everything." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I hesitated, then forced a small laugh. "Yeah, guess some habits stick." He nodded slowly. Didn't smile. "You two were together for almost a year," he said. Not a question. "Yeah." Another pause. He reached for a glass, filled it with water. He didn't take the breakup well. That surprised me. He didn't. Ethan's jaw tightened just slightly. "No." I swallowed, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. "He never reached out." "He wouldn't," Ethan said. Pride thing. The silence that followed was different. Heavier. Less careful. "You hurt him," Ethan added, not accusing, just stating it like a fact. I nodded. "I know." For a moment, I thought that was it, that this was where he'd draw a line. Tell me this was a mistake. Ask me to leave. Instead, he looked at me in a way that made my stomach twist. "He hurt you too," he said. I stared at him. "He told you that?" "No," Ethan replied. I saw it. Something about the way he said it, past tense, steady, made my breath catch. When he walked away, the apartment felt smaller. Like we'd finally acknowledged the shape of the thing we'd been stepping around. After that, the distance between us shrank. Not physically at first. Emotionally. We started talking more. About work. About movies. About stupid things like the neighbor's dog that barked at nothing. Sometimes Ryan came up, sometimes he didn't. Ethan never defended him. Never criticized him either. What he did do was notice me. The way my leg bounced when I was anxious. The fact that I always stayed up too late. The nights I forgot to eat until midnight. One evening, I came home drained, shoulders tight, head pounding. I barely made it through the door before dropping my bag. "Rough day?" Ethan asked. "Yeah," I muttered. "One of those." He studied me for a second, then nodded toward the couch. "Sit." I raised an eyebrow. That wasn't a suggestion, was it? "Nope." I sat. He disappeared into the kitchen, came back with a beer, handed it to me. Our fingers brushed this time, definitely brushed, and neither of us pulled away immediately. "Drink," he said quietly. I did. When I looked up, he was still watching me. Not like Ryan used to, impatient, distracted. This was different. Focused. Almost protective. And that was the moment it hit me. Whatever this was between us, it wasn't new. It had been waiting. Quietly. Patiently. And I had a feeling Ethan knew it long before I did. After that night, things stopped pretending. Nothing happened, not in the obvious way, but something shifted into place, like we'd both finally admitted there was a current running under everything. And once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. Ethan started coming home earlier. Not dramatically, just earlier enough that we'd overlap. He'd ask what I was making for dinner. I'd ask how his day was. Sometimes we'd eat together at the small table by the window, knees almost touching, both of us pretending not to notice when they did. He laughed more around me too. Quiet laughs, usually at stupid things I said without thinking. When I caught it happening, it made my chest feel warm and uneasy at the same time. One night, I came out of my room to grab water and found him standing on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear. I stopped short when I heard Ryan's name. "I'm not doing this again," Ethan said, voice low but firm. "You don't get to interrogate me." I hovered in the hallway, frozen, guilt crawling up my spine. There was a pause. I couldn't hear Ryan's voice, but I could imagine it. Tight. Defensive. The way it used to sound when he felt cornered. "I didn't invite him to hurt you," Ethan continued. "He needed a place. That's it." Another pause. Longer this time. He's not using me, Ethan said, jaw tight. And no, I'm not stupid. I backed away quietly before he could see me, heart pounding. I lay on my bed afterward, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words. He's not using me. The next morning, Ethan was already in the kitchen when I came out. 2 mugs. Coffee ready. Like nothing had happened. But his eyes lingered on me longer than usual. Ryan called, he said finally. I tensed. What did he say? Ethan leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. He wanted to know why you're here. I forced a weak smile. And I told him it wasn't his business. That hit harder than I expected. He's my brother, Ethan added. But he doesn't get to control my life. Or yours. I swallowed. I don't want to come between you. You're not, he said immediately. Too quickly. Then, softer. This was my choice. The word this hung between us, undefined and heavy. That night, we watched a movie together. Nothing romantic, some dumb action thing we barely paid attention to. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, a polite distance neither of us commented on. Halfway through, I shifted, stretching my legs out. Ethan glanced down. Then, slowly, deliberately, he shifted too close enough that our thighs touched. Neither of us moved away. The contact was casual, innocent, but my pulse spiked like I'd been caught doing something wrong. I could feel the warmth of him through the fabric of our clothes. Solid. Grounding. You okay? He asked quietly, eyes still on the screen. Yeah, I said, voice a little rough. You? He nodded once. Didn't move. I became hyper-aware of everything after that. The way he breathed. The way his arm rested along the back of the couch, close enough that if I leaned back just slightly, I'd feel it. I didn't, but I wanted to. When the movie ended, neither of us stood up right away. The credits rolled. The room dim and quiet. This is probably a bad idea, I said suddenly. Ethan turned his head toward me. Sitting on a couch? I exhaled a laugh. Us. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me. Really looked at me. Like he wasn't seeing Ryan's ex or his tenant but me. Yeah, he said finally. Probably. My chest tightened. Then why dash? Because wanting something doesn't stop just because it's inconvenient, he said quietly. Silence stretched between us again. But this time, it wasn't careful. It was loaded. I noticed you, he added, almost reluctantly. Back then, you and Ryan. I held my breath. You were always watching the room, he continued. Like you were waiting for something to fall apart. I swallowed. You barely talked to me. I didn't trust myself to, he admitted. That did it. That cracked something open in me. I stood abruptly. I should go to bed. He nodded. Didn't try to stop me. But as I passed him, his hand caught my wrist. Not tight. Just enough. I turned back. His eyes were dark now. Uncertain. Controlled. Wanting. If this crosses a line, he said, tell me. I didn't pull away. I didn't lean in either. I don't know where the line is anymore, I admitted. His thumb brushed once over the inside of my wrist. Barely there. Neither do I, he said. He let go. I went to my room and closed the door, heart racing, body buzzing like I'd just escaped something dangerous. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted to be safe. The next few days felt like walking around with a secret humming under my skin. Ethan didn't avoid me, but he didn't push either. If anything, he became more careful. Too careful. Like he was deliberately giving me space he didn't actually want to give. That somehow made it worse. I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. Just quick glances. Lingering half seconds. When our eyes met, he never looked embarrassed, just thoughtful. Like he was weighing consequences he already knew wouldn't stop him if it came down to it. Ryan texted me that week. I hadn't expected that. I'd half convinced myself I'd been erased from his life entirely. Ryan, didn't know you were living with my brother. Ryan, that's interesting. I stared at the screen for a long time before locking my phone and tossing it onto the bed. I didn't reply. I didn't know him one. Still, the knot in my chest tightened. That night, Ethan cooked. Properly cooked. Music playing low, sleeves rolled up, completely focused on what he was doing. I leaned against the counter, pretending not to watch the way his forearms flexed when he stirred the pan. Ryan messaged you, he said without looking up. I stiffened. Yeah. You don't have to tell me what he said. I know. Silence. Then, did it bother you? I considered lying. Decided against it. A little. He nodded, jaw tightening. He's trying to get a reaction. That's kind of his thing, I said quietly. Ethan glanced at me then, eyes sharp. He always needed to feel like he mattered. The implication landed softly but solidly. You matter, he added, like it was obvious. My throat tightened. Ethan dash. He turned back to the stove. Eat first. Dinner was good. Not just the food. The normalcy of it. Two people sitting across from each other, pretending this wasn't complicated. Afterward, we ended up on the couch again. Different night. Same tension. This time, when our thighs touched, neither of us pretended not to notice. You ever think about how weird timing is? I asked suddenly. All the time, he said. If I'd met you first, dash. He cut me off gently. We didn't. I looked at him. Does that matter? He exhaled slowly, eyes on the far wall. It should. But it doesn't, I said. He didn't argue. Later that night, the power went out. No dramatic storm, just a sudden blackout. The apartment dropped into quiet darkness, broken only by the city glow filtering in through the windows. Breaker's probably fine, Ethan said, standing. Happens sometimes. I followed him instinctively, standing closer than necessary as he checked his phone flashlight. You scared of the dark? He teased lightly. Only when I'm not alone. I shot back. That earned a soft laugh. The lights came back on a second later, abrupt and bright. We blinked at each other, suddenly too close, caught in the moment. Neither of us moved. This is crossing a line, Ethan said again. Quieter this time. Less convincing. Then stop me, I replied. I don't know who leaned in first. All I know is that when his hand came up to my jaw, it was steady, careful, like he was giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. The kiss was brief, soft, almost hesitant, but it rewired something in me anyway. When we broke apart, we stayed close, foreheads almost touching, breathing the same air. This can't be casual, he said. I don't want it to be. That surprised him. I saw it in his eyes. Ryan dash, he started. I'm not with Ryan, I said firmly. And I'm not doing this to hurt him. I'm doing it because I want you. That did it. He pulled back then, not because he didn't want me, but because he wanted to think, which somehow felt more dangerous than giving in. I need time, he said. I nodded, even though every part of me screamed, don't slow down now. I'm not going anywhere, I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Then, quietly, that's what scares me. I went to bed that night with my heart racing and my lips still tingling, knowing something irreversible had started. And knowing Ryan, whether he liked it or not, was already part of the fallout. The waiting was worse than the wanting. Ethan asked for time, and I told him I understood, but understanding didn't quiet the way my body reacted every time he walked into a room, or the way my chest tightened whenever his phone buzzed and he glanced at the screen, unreadable. We fell into a strange truce after the kiss. Polite, careful, too aware. He stopped sitting next to me on the couch. I stopped lingering in doorways. We both pretended sleep schedules had suddenly shifted, even though I could still hear him pacing some nights, footsteps slow and restless. Ryan called him again. I knew because Ethan didn't hide it this time. I'm not discussing him with you, Ethan said into the phone one evening, voice flat. No, this isn't about you. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, feeling like an unwanted ghost in a conversation that shouldn't still have power over me but did. Later that night, Ethan knocked on my door. Not casual, not accidental. Can we talk? He asked. I nodded, stepping aside. He stood just inside my room, hands in his pockets, gaze moving briefly over the space like he was grounding himself. I've been doing this thing, he said slowly, where I pretend restraint is the same as clarity. I didn't interrupt. It's not, he continued. It's just fear dressed up as responsibility. My heart started pounding. Ryan came by today, he added. That landed hard. Here. No. He wanted to. Ethan shook his head. I said no. I searched his face. Because of me? Because of me, he corrected. Because I'm tired of making choices around him instead of for myself. Silence stretched between us, thick and expectant. I don't regret kissing you, he said quietly. That's the problem. I took a step closer. That doesn't sound like a problem. It is when it could cost people, he replied. Then softer, but I don't think avoiding it would actually save anyone. I was close enough now to see the tension in his jaw, the restraint in the way he held himself. I'm not asking you to choose me over your brother, I said. I'm just asking you to be honest about what you want. He looked at me, then really looked, and something settled. I want you, he said. Simple. Steady. No drama. The relief was almost dizzying. He crossed the remaining distance between us, hands warm at my waist, grounding me like he always did. The kiss this time wasn't hesitant. Still controlled but deeper. Intentional. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "We take this slow," he said. "No secrets. No pretending." I nodded. "Slow I can do." He smiled faintly. "Good. Because I'm terrible at pretending." After that, things didn't explode the way I'd half expected. They deepened. We went on walks instead of dates. Shared late-night conversations instead of rushing into something physical. His hand found mine more often than not, thumb brushing my knuckles like he was reassuring himself I was real. Ryan didn't disappear, but he faded. The power he had over the situation weakened the more Ethan stopped reacting to him. One night, as we lay side by side on the couch, legs tangled, Ethan murmured, "I think I always noticed you." I turned to him. "Even back then, especially back then," he said. "You deserved better than what he gave you." I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and sure. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone's aftermath. I felt chosen. And this time, it wasn't by accident. Being chosen didn't mean being safe. I learned that the first time Ryan showed up anyway. It was a Saturday afternoon. Ethan was out grabbing groceries, and I was halfway through folding laundry when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My chest tightened immediately, instinct before logic. I checked the peephole. Ryan. He looked thinner, edgier, like someone who'd been sleeping badly and blaming the wrong reasons. Same familiar posture, though. Same way of standing, like he was already bracing for a fight. I shouldn't have opened the door, but I did. "What are you doing here?" I asked quietly, keeping my body angled so he couldn't see inside. He scoffed. "Wow. Still polite. Guess that tracks." Ryan dash. "So it's true," he cut in. "You and him." My jaw tightened. "You don't get to interrogate me." He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You always did that. Pretended you were above the mess while standing right in it." "That's not fair," I said. "No," he snapped, stepping closer. "What's not fair is that you move on with my brother." Something flared in me, then not guilt, not shame. Anger. "I didn't plan this," I said firmly. "And I didn't do it to hurt you." "Doesn't matter," he replied. "You knew it would." Before I could respond, the door opened wider. Ethan stood behind me. "Enough," he said calmly. Ryan turned, surprise flickering across his face before hardening into resentment. "So you're really doing this?" Ethan didn't raise his voice, didn't posture. That somehow made it worse for Ryan. "I am," Ethan said. "And you don't get to take this out on him." Ryan looked between us, eyes sharp, searching for something to grab onto. "You always do this. You always think you know better." "I do know better," Ethan replied. "Because I've spent years cleaning up after you." Silence fell heavy between them. Then Ryan exhaled sharply, backing away. "Fine. Whatever. Enjoy your little experiment." He left without another word. The door clicked shut. I stood there shaking, adrenaline buzzing through me like I'd just run from something. Ethan turned to me immediately. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my chest felt tight. "Yeah, I think so." He hesitated, then pulled me into a hug. Not crushing, not dramatic, just solid. "Safe." "I'm sorry," he murmured. "You shouldn't have had to deal with that." "I knew this wouldn't be easy," I said into his shoulder. He rested his chin lightly against my head. Neither did I. That night, we talked longer than we ever had. About Ryan. About childhood. About how Ethan had always felt like the steady one while his brother burned bright and fast, and how that dynamic never really went away. "You don't disappear when things get hard," Ethan said quietly. "That's why this scares me." I looked at him. "Because you don't want to mess it up?" "Because I don't want to lose it," he corrected. That distinction mattered. The weeks after were quieter. Not tension-free but intentional. We learned each other in small ways. Morning routines. Grocery store debates. The way he reached for my hand in public without thinking about it. Ryan stopped calling. I didn't know if that meant acceptance or distance. Maybe both. One night, lying next to Ethan, his arm around me, city lights flickering through the window, I realized something that made my throat tighten. This wasn't a rebound. This wasn't rebellion. This wasn't unresolved history repeating itself. This was two people choosing each other despite the history. And for the first time, that felt like enough. The strange thing about calm is how suspicious it feels when you're not used to it. Weeks passed. Real ones. Not the fragile, tiptoeing kind. Life with a capital L weeks. Groceries, deadlines, laundry piling up and getting folded together on Sunday mornings. Ethan and I stopped narrating what we were doing and just did it. We were careful, still, but no longer afraid. Ryan stayed quiet. Too quiet, if I was being honest. I didn't miss him, exactly, but I noticed the absence like you notice when a toothache finally fades. Relief mixed with the faint echo of something unresolved. One night, Ethan came home later than usual. I was on the couch, half asleep, TV murmuring to no one. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and stood there for a moment, just watching me. Long day, I asked. Productive, he said, then added. I ran into Ryan. I sat up fully. Oh, coffee shop near my office, he continued, shrugging off his jacket. Unplanned. I waited. He apologized, Ethan said. The words sounded almost foreign coming from him. My eyebrows lifted. Really? Not well, he clarified. But sincerely, I think. In his way. I let out a slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. And you? I told him I wasn't choosing sides, Ethan said, sitting down beside me. I told him I was choosing honesty. He glanced at me then, eyes steady, and that I wasn't asking for permission. Something in my chest loosened. That couldn't have been easy, I said. No, he agreed. Then, quieter, but it felt right. We sat there in comfortable silence, his arms settling around my shoulders like it belonged there, which it did. A few days later, I got a message from Ryan. Ryan, I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know I'm done being angry. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. Me. I hope you find what you're looking for. And for the first time, I meant it without resentment. That night, Ethan and I lay in bed. The window cracked open, city sounds drifting in. He traced absent circles on my arm, a habit he'd picked up without realizing it. You ever think about how close this all came to not happening? He asked. Yeah, I said, but I don't think it would have stayed quiet forever. He smiled faintly. You're right. You were never meant to be temporary. I turned to face him. Neither were you. There was no dramatic declaration after that. No grand promise. Just a shared understanding that this whatever it was something we were building deliberately. And that made all the difference. Sometimes I think back to that first moment at the door. The pause. The recognition in his eyes. How he knew exactly who I was and still stepped aside to let me in. I didn't just move in with my ex's older brother. I moved into a life that finally felt like it fit. And this time, nothing about it felt like a mistake. I didn't realize it was the ending until it felt quiet in the right way. Not the kind of quiet that comes from holding your breath. The kind that settles in after you finally exhaled. Ethan and I didn't mark anything officially. No anniversary. No labels forced too early. We just kept choosing each other in small, boring, deeply meaningful ways. Grocery lists stuck to the fridge. A spare toothbrush that stopped feeling like a question. His hand finding the small of my back automatically when we crossed the street. One night, months later, we were lying on the floor of the living room, backs against the couch, half watching the rain slide down the windows. Ethan was absently tracing patterns on my knee, his focus split between me and the sound of the city. You know, he said, I used to think stability meant never wanting more. I turned my head to look at him. And now I think it means wanting more and not being afraid to build it. I smiled. You're getting philosophical. He shrugged. You do that to people. I thought about Ryan then. Not with bitterness. Not even with sadness. Just clarity. What we'd been had mattered, but it had also ended exactly when it needed to. Loving Ethan didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like honesty arriving late, but right on time. A week later, Ethan asked me if I wanted to stay. Not move and stay. As in, he said carefully, stop thinking of this as temporary. I didn't hesitate. Yeah, I said. I do. He nodded once, like he'd already known the answer, but needed to hear it anyway. That night, as we got ready for bed, I caught our reflection in the mirror, him behind me, arms around my waist, both of us relaxed in a way I'd never been before. No tension, no waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just us. Sometimes people ask how it started, and I tell them the truth, even if it sounds strange. I moved in with my ex's older brother. What I don't always say but always feel is that he knew exactly who I was. And instead of closing the door on me, he opened it.